All right, let's talk about one of the riskiest, most mind-bending strategies in all of global politics, the Madman Theory. It is a massive psychological gamble, right? It's been used by leaders trying to get an edge in situations where just one wrong move could mean absolute catastrophe.
And this quote right here, this is where it gets its name. President Richard Nixon talking to his chief of staff. The plan was as simple as it was terrifying. Convince your enemy that you are so unstable, so unpredictable, that you might actually be crazy enough to push the nuclear button. The hope that they'd be so scared they'd just back down. And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's the central puzzle of the entire nuclear age. See, in a world of mutually assured destruction, MAD, threatening nuclear war is just, it's not rational. No sane leader would choose to annihilate their own country along with their enemy. So to make a threat like that stick, you have to convince your opponent that you might not be sane at all. Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll dig into that core problem of credibility that the whole theory tries to solve. Then we'll unpack what the Madman Theory actually is. After that, we'll look at how it plays out on the international stage, and then dive into the domestic costs, which, spoiler, are often forgotten. And finally, we'll try to answer the big question. Is this strategy mad, or is it genius? So what is the Madman Theory, really? Well, you have to go back to early nuclear strategists like Thomas Schelling. They were wrestling with this exact problem. How on earth do you make a threat that's literally unthinkable seem plausible? Here's the core idea in a nutshell. When you're trying to force someone to do something with threats, if they think you're genuinely crazy enough to risk a total disaster, they might just decide it's safer to give you what you want. You're basically weaponizing unpredictability. It's a high-stakes bluff about your own sanity. And what's really interesting is that madness here isn't just one thing. Researchers have kind of broken it down into two different flavors. First, you've got the leader who seems to make decisions based on pure emotion, lashing out in anger instead of thinking logically. Then you've got the leader with just an extreme tolerance for risk, someone who seems willing to accept, say, a 75% chance of total destruction to get what they want. Either way, it makes an opponent stop and think. Okay, let's move on to the first level of this whole game. How is this strategy supposed to work on the world stage? Leader against leader, country against country. So the main upside, at least in theory, is that it can make your opponent actually believe a threat that seems completely self-destructive. If Nixon had really convinced the Soviets he was unhinged, maybe his threats to escalate the war in Vietnam would have carried more weight. The perception of madness is supposed to give credibility to incredible threats. But, and this is a huge but, there's a massive downside. It creates what strategists call commitment problems. I mean, think about it. If you see the other guy is genuinely unstable, why would you ever trust them to honor an agreement? If you give in to one of their demands, what's to stop them from making another, crazier one tomorrow? It makes diplomacy almost impossible and just jacks up the risk of everything spiraling out of control. So even though the theory has this kind of dark, cold logic to it, a lot of recent research has come to the same conclusion. The actual benefits you get on the international stage are pretty limited. The risks, more often than not, just aren't worth the reward. But look, the international chess match is only half the picture. To really get why this strategy usually fails, we have to look at the second level of the game, what happens at home. And this is the part that so often gets overlooked, because traditional strategy just focuses on the adversary and it forgets that every leader has to answer to their own people. And here it is, the other side of that coin. The research is crystal clear on this. While the international benefits are shaky at best, the strategy is almost always deeply unpopular at home. It turns out your own citizens generally don't love it when you act like a madman on the world stage. And here's how that public disapproval completely undermines the whole thing. First, leaders know it's going to be unpopular, so they're less likely to even try it. Second, if they do go for it, they often try to keep it secret, just like Nixon did with his secret nuclear alert, Operation Giant Lance. But here's the catch. If it's a secret, your enemy can't see it, so the threat has no credibility. And finally, if it is public, all that disapproval at home sends a clear signal to your enemy. This leader doesn't have the support to actually follow through. And hey, this isn't just a theory. We've got the data to prove it. Take this 2017 Fox News poll, for example. It found that a staggering 70% of Americans disapproved of President Trump's fire and fury rhetoric against North Korea. That kind of opposition at home can seriously cripple a leader's power abroad. So let's put it all together. When you look at both the international and the domestic levels, what's the final verdict here? Is this a stroke of strategic genius, or is it just, well, mad?
Let's look at the scorecard. Internationally, you get a very small, maybe boost in credibility, but it comes at the huge cost of making deals impossible and risking accidental war. And then domestically, there are zero benefits, none. All you get is high public disapproval that ends up undermining the entire strategy anyway.
And that right there is the crucial takeaway. The Madman Theory has one fundamental fatal flaw. It's obsessed with one audience, the foreign enemy, and it completely ignores the second equally critical audience, the public back home. You can't succeed on the world stage if you've lost the support of your own people. And all of this leaves us with a pretty important question for our time. In an era where unpredictable leaders seem to be more common, have we seen the last of this dangerous idea? Or is its dark appeal actually starting to grow? That's definitely something to think about. Thanks for watching.